After a very interesting week 0, it's finally week 1. College football is back. And although a lot of these games are probably not going to be very close, just a lot of warm-up games for some of these more higher-ranked teams, I'm going to go through and predict every single one of them and give my score prediction as well. So starting off with NC State versus Western Carolina. This should be a pretty easy one for NC State. You could even say they're a little bit underrated going into this season. All the talk's been about Miami and Florida State and Clemson. They've been a little bit forgotten, and I think they proved themselves here with a big 45-7 win over Western Carolina. Then another similar situation with Missouri taking on Murray State. I think Missouri takes care of business here. They're a playoff contender, but it all starts here, and I think they win comfortably with a 56-3 win over Murray State. Lindenwood, an FCS team, will be taking on, believe it or not, a playoff contender. No, not for basketball, the Kansas Jayhawks. Believe it or not, they are competing for a playoff spot this year. Their team is more than capable of it, but they're in a very tough conference. But obviously they need a win here, and I think they will get it pretty easily, very easily actually, with a 63-10 win. This game will be played in the home of the MLS team in Kansas City, as their stadium is under renovation. Then they will move to Arrowhead later in the year. Utah is my pick to win the Big 12 Conference, and I think they easily get a win over Southern Utah here. I think they get the shutout and win 42-0 to start what should be an exciting season. In the SEC, it's not easy to get wins, but Oklahoma should find one here against Temple, who has not been a very successful team. Even though they are in the FBS and not the FCS, this should be a very comfortable win for Oklahoma, and I do predict them to win 59-14. Brett Venables still looking to turn this team around after Lincoln Riley's departure, and I think this one helps. A contender for Game of the Week. It's in Atlanta. It's a neutral site, but it's basically a home game for Georgia. Clemson versus Georgia, Cade Klubnik, and the Tigers versus Carson Beck and the Bulldogs. And although Clemson might not be getting as much respect as I think they maybe should be, I still think Georgia wins this one. I think they win by more than 13.5, which they're favored by. I'm going to say they win this one 38-24. This next game, Penn State versus West Virginia, is a very bad matchup for Penn State. West Virginia has a good team this year. It's week 1. Penn State's still adjusting to the season. So I think this could be an upset, but I think Penn State's defense is just too good. And I think that while they could lose this game, and I do think West Virginia keeps it close, maybe they take the lead late in the game, especially maybe in the first half. Ultimately, I think Penn State wins 24-21. If Iowa has a good season and their offense improves, they could find themselves in the playoffs, but it starts with a win here against Illinois State, and I think they get that win, and their defense always plays very well, and they get a 38-0 win. Tennessee also has a chance to make the playoffs, and starts here with a win versus Chattanooga. I think Tennessee is a very talented and underrated offense, and I think they get a big win here, 59-7. With Oklahoma State and South Dakota State, unlike some of these other games where the FBS team should win pretty comfortably, South Dakota State is one of the best, if not the best, FCS team out there, and they're going to put up a pretty good fight, I would imagine, against Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State is currently favored by 10. I do think it's going to be less than that. I think they'll win by a touchdown, something like that, and my score prediction is 34-27. I think South Dakota State keeps it close. They got a winning culture. They know how to win, but so does Oklahoma State. With talent like Ollie Gordon returning, I think they win this one. Then 3:30 on CBS, it's Ohio State and Akron. I think Ohio State wins this one very easily. One of the most talented teams in the country. Will Howard plays his first game at Ohio State, and I think they win very easily with a 52-0 win over Akron, who's been struggling in recent years. Next up is Colorado State and Texas, and Texas is favored by 32.5 points, and I think Colorado State does not lose by that much. I think they're good enough to where they can keep it closer than that, and I do say the Longhorns win, though, 34-14, and obviously Texas is going to win this one. They have a very good chance of not only winning the SEC championship, but also the national championship if things go their way. Cam Ward's first game with the Miami Hurricanes will not be an easy one. They got to go to Florida in a game Florida really needs. not because they're a playoff contender really, but because their schedule is so hard. These kind of games that are sort of winnable, you got to have them. In Miami, they also need this game really badly because one loss like this can really hurt your playoff chances. And so I do think this one will be very close. I believe the Miami is favored by 2.5 points. I actually think it will be even closer than that. I think Miami wins. I'm going to say 28-27. But honestly, this game should be really fun to watch. Two teams that really want to win this one. And to have it so early in the season is really cool to see. I think Alabama's heard all the noise all offseason about how they're not going to be as good, how the dynasty is over without Nick Saban. And I think they're going to make a statement in week 1 against Western Kentucky, kind of prove that they're still here and they can still do things that they did when Nick Saban was coaching the team. And that includes winning the games they should win. And I think they win big here, 66-17. Ole Miss has a ton of hype around them, and I think they're definitely going to be a playoff team this year. Jackson Dart and this offense are not afraid to score points. Even though Quinshon Judkins left for Ohio State, they're still going to score a ton of points to be one of the best offenses in college football. And I think they also make a statement with a 70-7 win over Furman. Avery Johnson replaces Will Howard at Kansas State, and he leads a team who could very well compete for a playoff spot. And they have to start off with a win, obviously. I think they do it against UT Martin with a convincing 45-3 win here. In Kansas State, they're right up there with Oklahoma State, Utah, Arizona. So it'll be very interesting to see how the season goes for them. Oregon starts their season with what should be a win against Idaho. Dylan Gabriel and his Ducks team are one of the favorites to win the national championship for a reason, and I think they take care of business here with a convincing 63-6 win. Then the game of the week, Notre Dame versus Texas A&M. And Notre Dame needs these kind of games. They're not a conference, so they don't have that conference championship to help their resume. So they really need these wins. And Texas A&M is a winnable game for sure. But it is in Texas A&M, so they are going to really have a struggle here. A lot of the conversation will be about Riley Leonard, Notre Dame's new quarterback from Duke, and how he will perform in his first game, especially under this amount of pressure. But you got to remember, too, that Texas A&M's transitioning, too, out of the Jimbo Fisher era. While I think Texas A&M is going to keep this one close, I don't think they're going to win, even though they are the favorites. So I am going to go with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish to get the win here. I'll say 28-24. Like I said before, because Notre Dame's not in a conference, these big games where everyone's watching, including the committee, are just that much more important. And so I think Notre Dame is going to make sure they win this one. Similar to Alabama, I think Michigan has something to prove as well. I think they're equally frustrated with how they've been treated, ranked number 9 after their national championship win. So I think they win a game against actually pretty good Fresno State team. But I still think Michigan wins pretty comfortably with a 34-10 win. The other thing to consider in this game is Michigan and their quarterback situation. They didn't get a major transfer, as many expected them to. They didn't get DJ Uyunglele, Dylan Gabriel, or Cam Ward, just to name a few. And that leaves a situation where they might be playing multiple quarterbacks against Fresno State, which could obviously make things a little more challenging. New Mexico came very close last week to winning against one of the best FCS programs in Montana State. But unfortunately for them, I don't know if they'll do as well this time. They got to play against Arizona, who is heavily favored. They're the number 21 team in the country, and they don't expect them to struggle much here. And I think they win 49-17. On Sunday, USC and LSU play in Las Vegas, and both these teams are kind of similar in a way. Both teams are trying to replace very good quarterbacks and overall very good offenses, but also have struggled on defense recently, and so both will look to improve defensively. Overall, though, I think LSU is just the better team. I think this will be a very high-scoring game, which makes sense. And I think LSU wins 45-42 and starts their season off well. And then finally on Monday night, it's Florida State and Boston College in Tallahassee. And I do think, although Florida State is favored by 17, I think they'll win by more than that to make a statement against the Boston College team they shouldn't have too much trouble with. And I think they'll win this game 35-17. So those are my week 1 predictions. Please let me know what you agree with, what you disagree with in the comments. And as always, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.